What you're about to hear is one of the most devastating cases of online deception and manipulation that investigators have ever encountered. A story so heartbreaking and calculated that it will change how you view online relationships forever. Stay with me until the end, because the warning signs revealed in this case could save your life or the life of someone you love. In November 2023, the pristine coral atolls of the Maldives witnessed a horror that would haunt investigators forever. The Sunset Paradise Resort, a modest but beautiful family-run establishment, had welcomed countless honeymooning couples over the years. But on November 18, 2023, housekeeping would discover a scene so brutal and heartbreaking that it would change everyone involved. The victim was Emma Rodriguez, a 24-year-old kindergarten teacher from Los Angeles who had dedicated her life to helping children learn and grow. Her new husband, Rashid, a 42-year-old construction contractor from Dubai, sat catatonic on their bungalow's small porch, his clothes soaked in blood, mumbling incoherently about teaching her a lesson. What had begun as an online romance between a lonely teacher and a charming widower had devolved into the most heartbreaking case of domestic violence the small island nation had ever witnessed. The investigation would reveal a web of lies so elaborate and a pattern of manipulation so cruel that it would leave seasoned detectives questioning their faith in humanity. At 10:15 a.m., resort housekeeper Fatima Ali knocked on Bungalow 12, concerned that the couple hadn't emerged for breakfast and had missed their scheduled snorkeling excursion. When no one answered, she used her master key and stepped into a nightmare that would traumatize her for life. Emma's body lay crumpled in the corner of the small bedroom, her wedding dress from 3 days prior bloodied beyond recognition. Her face was so severely beaten that she was unrecognizable. The same face that had lit up countless children's days with her warm smile was now a mass of bruises and lacerations. The most heartbreaking detail was clutched in Emma's hand, a small photo of her kindergarten class that she had brought on her honeymoon to show Rashid. The children's innocent faces, now splattered with their teacher's blood, seemed to watch over the crime scene with haunting silence. Around her neck was a cheap costume jewelry necklace. The family heirloom Rashid had claimed belonged to his deceased first wife. Investigation would later reveal he had purchased it at a Dubai flea market for $20. Just another lie in his elaborate web of deception. Rashid was found sitting motionless on the porch, staring at the ocean with empty eyes. His knuckles were raw and bleeding, his shirt stained with Emma's blood, and beside him sat an empty bottle of local rum, the only alcohol they could afford on their modest budget. When police arrived, Rashid's first words chilled them to the bone. She found out about the children. She was going to ruin everything. I had to stop her from leaving me. His confession would reveal a truth so twisted that it would destroy not just Emma's family, but the families of countless others. Before we continue with this shocking story, I want to ask you to do something important. If this content is helping you understand the warning signs of online predators, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Your support helps us share these crucial safety messages with more people who need to hear them. The investigation would uncover that Rashid wasn't just a construction worker. He was a man who had been systematically targeting and destroying women for over a decade, leaving a trail of broken lives across 3 continents. But Emma's murder wasn't his first. It was simply the first time he'd been caught. Emma Rodriguez had always been the type of person who saw the best in everyone. At 24, she taught kindergarten at Lincoln Elementary in East Los Angeles, where she was beloved by students, parents, and colleagues alike. Her small apartment was filled with handmade cards from her students, thanking Miss Emma for her patience, kindness, and the way she made learning fun. But Emma's generous heart masked deep loneliness. She had been single for 3 years after her college boyfriend left her for someone more exciting. Her weekends were spent grading papers and preparing lesson plans while her friends moved on with marriages and careers that seemed more glamorous than shaping young minds for $45,000 a year. Emma gave everything to her students. Her principal, Mrs. Garcia, later told investigators she'd spend her own money on supplies, stay late to help struggling kids, and never complained about her tiny salary. She just wanted to make a difference, and she deserves someone who would cherish that beautiful heart. Emma's vulnerability deepened after her father's sudden death from a heart attack in 2022. Her mother had retreated into depression, and Emma found herself caring for both her grieving mother and her demanding students. The isolation made her desperate for connection, for someone who would care for her the way she cared for everyone else. Rashid Alzara presented himself as everything Emma needed, a stable, kind widower who understood loss and valued family above all else. His dating profile described him as a 42-year-old construction contractor who had lost his beloved wife Sarah to cancer 2 years prior, leaving him to raise their 8-year-old daughter Amira alone. The photos he used showed a handsome, modest man in work clothes playing with a beautiful little girl at a Dubai playground. His messages to Emma were carefully crafted to appeal to her nurturing instincts. He wrote about struggling to braid Amira's hair, about missing his wife's cooking, about wanting to find someone who could love his daughter as much as he did. He seemed so genuine. Emma's best friend Lisa would later tearfully recall, he'd send Emma photos of this adorable little girl and ask for advice about parenting. Emma was so excited about the possibility of being a stepmother, she'd spend hours researching activities they could do together when she visited Dubai. But every detail of Rashid's story was a meticulously crafted lie. The photos of Amira were stolen from a German family's social media account. The touching stories about his deceased wife were plagiarized from grief support forums. Even his job was fabricated. Rashid had no steady employment and survived by scamming women he met online. The truth about Rashid was far more sinister than Emma could have imagined. Born Rashid Alzara in Dubai, he had been married 4 times, not once. His first wife, Nadia, had died under suspicious circumstances in 2015, officially ruled a suicide, but her family suspected foul play. His second wife, Priya, had disappeared entirely in 2018 after filing a police report about domestic violence that mysteriously went missing. His third wife, Jennifer, an Australian teacher he had met online, had divorced him after 6 months of what court documents described as systematic psychological torture and financial abuse. She had fled Dubai with nothing, too traumatized to speak publicly about her experience. But the most chilling discovery was that there was no daughter named Amira. The child in the photos belonged to the Muller family in Berlin, whose social media Rashid had been monitoring for years. He had created an entire fictional life around their innocent daughter, using her image to manipulate vulnerable women around the world. He was a master manipulator. FBI behavioral analyst Dr. Sarah Chun later explained. He studied his victims' vulnerabilities and created personas specifically designed to exploit their deepest needs. Emma wanted to be a mother and help a grieving family, so he gave her exactly that fantasy. For 8 months, Rashid systematically broke down Emma's independence while building her emotional dependence on him. He would call her during her lunch breaks, text her constantly throughout the day, and demand video calls every evening. He shared fabricated stories about Amira's struggles in school, asking Emma to help with homework via video calls. Emma, thrilled to feel needed, would spend her evenings creating lesson plans for a child who didn't exist, buying books and educational games to send to Dubai. Most manipulatively, Rashid began isolating Emma from her support system by creating fake emergencies. He would claim Amira was sick or having behavioral problems right when Emma had plans with friends, forcing her to cancel to provide urgent parenting advice via video call. Looking back, I can see how he systematically destroyed her social life, Lisa reflected. Emma started declining invitations, missing girls' nights, even skipping family dinners because Rashid needed her. She became so focused on this fake family that she lost touch with her real life. The financial manipulation began slowly. Rashid claimed his construction business was struggling and asked Emma to help with small expenses, Amira's school fees, medical bills, even groceries. Emma, earning a teacher's modest salary, began sending money she couldn't afford, draining her savings account and maxing out credit cards to support a man and child who were using her kindness against her. By the time Rashid proposed via video call in September 2023, Emma was completely isolated, financially drained, and emotionally dependent on a relationship built entirely on lies. She had no idea that accepting his proposal had just signed her death warrant. Rashid's marriage proposal in September 2023 came during what Emma believed was a video call with both him and little Amira. The proposal was elaborate. Rashid had the child hold up handmade signs saying, "Will you be my new mommy?" while he got down on one knee holding a modest ring he claimed had belonged to his deceased wife. Emma said yes through tears of joy, believing she was finally getting the family she had always dreamed of. But the celebration was short-lived as Rashid immediately began pressuring her to visit Dubai for their wedding, claiming that Islamic customs required them to marry quickly now that they were engaged. He kept saying we couldn't wait because it would be inappropriate for us to continue our relationship unmarried. Emma confided to her mother during one of their increasingly rare phone calls. He made me feel guilty for even questioning the timeline. The first major red flag came when Rashid insisted that Emma couldn't meet Amira before the wedding because it would be too confusing for the child. He claimed his deceased wife's family was conservative and wouldn't approve of Amira bonding with a new mother figure until the marriage was official. More concerning was Rashid's sudden demand that Emma not tell anyone about their wedding plans. He claimed that his business partners were prejudiced against Americans and that knowledge of their marriage could hurt his construction contracts. Emma, naive and trusting, agreed to keep their engagement secret from everyone except her mother. As the wedding date approached, Rashid's financial requests became more urgent and substantial. He claimed that Islamic law required him to pay a substantial dowry to Emma's family, but that his construction business had hit a rough patch. He asked Emma to loan him $8,000 to cover the dowry and wedding expenses, promising to repay her immediately after the ceremony. Emma had to liquidate her small retirement account and borrow against her car to raise the money. When she transferred the funds to Rashid's Dubai bank account, she was unknowingly financing her own murder. Even more manipulatively, Rashid convinced Emma to take unpaid leave from her teaching job for an extended honeymoon. He claimed that as his wife, she wouldn't need to work anymore. He would provide for her, and she could focus on being a mother to Amira and eventually their own children. Emma was so excited about not having to worry about money anymore. Her colleague Sarah Martinez later recalled. She kept talking about how wonderful it would be to focus on being a wife and mother instead of struggling on a teacher's salary. She had no idea she was giving up her independence and safety net. In the weeks before her departure to Dubai, Emma's behavior became increasingly erratic and secretive. She stopped socializing with colleagues, began missing family dinners, and seemed constantly anxious about something she refused to discuss. Her best friend Lisa became concerned when Emma started making strange comments about starting over and leaving her old life behind. When Lisa pressed for details, Emma claimed she was just excited about her new marriage, but seemed nervous and jumpy. Most troubling was Emma's request that Lisa take care of her apartment and belongings while she was gone, with instructions to donate everything to charity if she didn't return within 6 months. When Lisa asked why Emma would say such a thing, Emma claimed it was just practical planning, but seemed genuinely frightened. She kept saying things like, "If anything happens to me, make sure my students know I love them." I thought she was just being dramatic about moving to another country, Lisa later told investigators through tears, but now I realize she sensed something was wrong. Emma's flight to Dubai on November 10th, 2023, was her first time leaving the United States. She documented the journey on her private Instagram account with excited selfies and messages about starting her new life as a wife and mother. But the reality that greeted her in Dubai was nothing like Rashid's promises. He picked her up from the airport alone, claiming that Amira was staying with relatives until after the honeymoon. The apartment he took her to was small, run down, and showed no evidence of a child living there. When Emma asked about Amira's bedroom, Rashid became aggressive for the first time, accusing her of not trusting him and questioning his parenting arrangements. Emma, exhausted from the long flight and overwhelmed by culture shock, apologized and tried to smooth things over. The wedding ceremony the next day was a courthouse affair with 2 strangers as witnesses. There was no celebration, no family, no indication that this was supposed to be the happiest day of Emma's life. When Emma asked about meeting Rashid's family, he claimed they were traditional and wouldn't accept her until she had proven herself as a good wife. The flight to the Maldives on November 15th should have been romantic, but Emma was already sensing that something was terribly wrong. Rashid's behavior had become increasingly controlling. He monitored her phone usage, became angry when she tried to contact her family, and started making disturbing comments about wives who didn't know their place. He kept talking about how American women were spoiled and needed to learn respect. Emma managed to text her mother during a bathroom break at the Dubai airport. "I'm scared, Mom, but I'm trying to make this work. I love him, and I know he loves me too." The Sunset Paradise Resort in the Maldives was beautiful but isolated, exactly what Rashid had planned. Emma's excited Instagram post from their first day showed a woman trying desperately to convince herself she was happy, but her forced smiles couldn't hide the fear growing in her eyes. On their second night, Emma discovered the truth about Amira when she found Rashid's unlocked phone and saw the German family social media account. The devastating realization that the child she had fallen in love with didn't exist, combined with the growing evidence of Rashid's lies about everything else, finally made Emma understand the trap she was in. But by then, it was too late to escape. On November 17th, their third day in paradise, Emma's world completely collapsed. While Rashid was in the shower, she managed to access his laptop using a password she had seen him type. What she found destroyed her last hope that this nightmare might somehow have a happy ending. The computer contained evidence of Rashid's true nature that was more horrifying than Emma could have imagined. There were dozens of folders labeled with women's names, each containing photos, personal information, and detailed psychological profiles. Emma found her own folder, titled Emma Teacher Easy Target, containing screenshots of her social media posts, analyses of her vulnerabilities, and even transcripts of their intimate conversations. Most devastating was a folder labeled Deceased, containing information about 4 women who had died under suspicious circumstances after becoming involved with Rashid. The files included newspaper clippings, death certificates, and Rashid's own notes about lessons learned from each case. But the discovery that broke Emma's heart completely was finding the real source of Amira's photos, the German family's social media account which Rashid had been monitoring for years. He had built an entire fictional relationship around an innocent child who had no idea her image was being used to manipulate vulnerable women around the world. Emma's hands shook as she read Rashid's detailed plans for their honeymoon, which included sections titled Isolation Techniques and Disposal Options. She realized with horror that she wasn't his wife, she was his next victim, and he had been planning her murder for months. When Rashid emerged from the bathroom and found Emma at his computer, his mask finally slipped completely. The charming, grieving widower disappeared, replaced by a cold-blooded predator who spoke to Emma like she was nothing more than an inconvenience to be eliminated. "You shouldn't have done that," he said calmly, closing the laptop. "Now you know too much to ever leave here alive." Emma tried to run, but the bungalow's isolated location meant there was nowhere to go. Rashid caught her before she reached the door, and for the first time, Emma saw the real monster she had married. His eyes were completely devoid of emotion as he explained how he had manipulated her from the beginning. "You were perfect," he told her conversationally while blocking her exit. "Lonely, trusting, desperate for a family. I knew you'd do anything to save a little girl who didn't exist and help a grieving widower who was never real." Emma begged him to let her go, promising she wouldn't tell anyone about what she had discovered. She offered him all her money, her apartment, anything he wanted if he would just let her return home to her students. But Rashid laughed at her desperation. "You think this is about money?" he asked, grabbing her by the throat. "This is about power, about teaching women like you that you can't just come into my world and then try to leave when things get difficult." What followed was not a crime of passion, but a calculated torture session that lasted nearly 4 hours. Rashid had planned every aspect of Emma's murder, drawing from what he had learned from killing his previous victims. He began by systematically destroying Emma's few possessions, including the photo of her kindergarten class that she had brought to show him. As he tore up the picture of her students, He described in detail how he had manipulated her love for children to lure her to her death. "Those little brats will never know what happened to their precious teacher," he taunted, scattering the torn pieces around the room. "They'll think you abandoned them, just like everyone else in your pathetic life." Emma's attempts to fight back only seemed to excite Rashid more. He used a broken rum bottle as a weapon, inflicting dozens of cuts across her arms and torso while describing how he had killed his previous victims. The defensive wounds on Emma's hands showed that she never stopped trying to protect herself, even as her strength faded. The most heartbreaking evidence was found later. Emma had managed to scratch "Tell students I love them" into the wooden floor beside where she lay dying, using her engagement ring as a makeshift tool. Even in her final moments, her thoughts were of the children she would never see again. Emma's murder was not quick or merciful. Rashid wanted her to suffer for discovering his lies and threatening his carefully constructed facade. He strangled her multiple times, reviving her each time she lost consciousness, so he could continue his psychological torture. He wanted her to know she was going to die. The coroner later explained to investigators, "The pattern of injuries suggests he kept her alive for hours, inflicting pain while describing how he had fooled her and how no one would ever find her body." Emma's final words, overheard by guests in the neighboring bungalow, were a heartbreaking cry of, "Please, I just want to go home to my kids," referring to her students who would never understand why their beloved teacher had disappeared. The murder weapon was ultimately the same rum bottle they had shared during their first night, which Rashid had deliberately broken to create jagged edges. The irony wasn't lost on investigators. He had killed her with a symbol of their fake honeymoon celebration. When resort staff found Emma's body the next morning, Rashid was sitting calmly on the porch, already planning his next move. He had made no attempt to hide the evidence because he believed his manipulation skills and victim-blaming tactics would protect him, just as they had in the past. His only concern was whether the neighboring guests had heard enough to implicate him directly. When police arrived, his first question wasn't about Emma's condition, but about whether he needed a lawyer, revealing the calculating mind that had orchestrated her murder from the beginning. The investigation into Emma's murder quickly expanded as detectives realized they weren't dealing with a simple case of domestic violence, but rather a serial killer who had been operating internationally for over a decade. Detective Inspector Hassan Mahmoud, leading the investigation, later described it as the most calculated and heartless crime he had encountered in 20 years of police work. Rashid's laptop revealed the full scope of his predatory behavior. The deceased folder contained detailed information about 4 women who had died under suspicious circumstances between 2015 and 2022. Each case had been ruled suicide or accident by local authorities who either lacked resources for proper investigation or had been corrupted by Rashid's connections. Nadia al-Rashid, his first wife, had allegedly jumped from their Dubai apartment balcony in 2015 after suffering months of psychological abuse. Priya Sharma, an Indian nurse he met online, had drowned in her bathtub in 2018 after transferring her life savings to Rashid's account. Jennifer Walsh, the Australian teacher, had accidentally fallen downstairs in 2020, dying from head trauma that forensic experts now believed was consistent with being pushed. Most chilling was the case of Maria Santos, a Filipino domestic worker who had been found dead in the desert outside Dubai in 2022. Local police had assumed she was the victim of human trafficking, never connecting her death to the construction worker who had been courting her online for months. The revelation of Rashid's crimes devastated multiple families across 3 continents. Emma's mother, Linda Rodriguez, collapsed when investigators informed her that her daughter's fairy tale romance had been an elaborate setup for murder. She was so excited about finally having a family, Linda sobbed during her victim impact statement. Emma had so much love to give, and this monster used that beautiful heart against her. She died believing she was going to be a mother to a little girl who didn't even exist. The German family whose daughter's photos had been stolen was horrified to learn how their child's innocent images had been used to manipulate vulnerable women. 8-year-old Greta Muller, the real child Rashid had pretended was his daughter, was traumatized when her parents explained why they had to delete their social media accounts and moved to protect her safety. Jennifer Walsh's family in Australia finally got answers about their daughter's suspicious death, but the closure came with unbearable guilt. "We knew something wasn't right about her accident," Jennifer's sister Kate tearfully explained. "But the Dubai police convinced us it was just a tragic fall. If we had pushed harder, maybe Emma and the others would still be alive." Forensic analysis of Rashid's devices revealed the sophisticated nature of his predatory system. He maintained active profiles on 47 different dating sites across multiple platforms, each carefully crafted to appeal to specific types of vulnerable women. Teachers, nurses, social workers, women in caring professions were his preferred targets because of their nurturing instincts and modest incomes. His hunting journal contained psychological profiles of over 200 women he had contacted, with detailed analyses of their vulnerabilities and manipulation strategies. Emma's profile was particularly extensive, noting her loneliness after her father's death, her financial struggles on a teacher's salary, and her desire for children. He studied these women like specimens, FBI behavioral analyst Dr. Rebecca Kim explained. He knew exactly which emotional buttons to push, which fake stories would appeal to each victim's specific vulnerabilities. It was predatory behavior at its most calculated and evil. The investigation also uncovered Rashid's financial crimes. He had stolen over $400,000 from his victims through various manipulation tactics, using the money to fund his lifestyle and pay for travel to isolate and murder women in different countries. Rashid's trial began in May 2024 and quickly became international news. His complete lack of remorse shocked even seasoned court observers. When prosecutors described Emma's final hours, Rashid showed no emotion except occasional smirks when particularly brutal details were revealed. His defense team attempted to claim cultural misunderstandings and mental illness, but the evidence of premeditation was overwhelming. The prosecution presented Rashid's detailed murder plans, his pattern of targeting vulnerable women, and expert testimony about his predatory psychology. The most powerful moment came when Emma's kindergarten students, now in first grade, submitted drawings and letters to the court expressing how much they missed their teacher. One 6-year-old wrote, "Miss Emma was the best teacher ever. She made me feel safe when I was scared. I hope she knows we still love her." On August 15th, 2024, Rashid was convicted of first-degree murder with special circumstances and sentenced to death. Additional charges for the murders of his previous victims were filed in multiple jurisdictions, ensuring he would never have the opportunity to harm another woman. But the real justice came from the changes Emma's murder sparked. Her story led to international cooperation agreements for investigating online predatory behavior, new protections for women traveling to meet online romantic partners, and educational programs about recognizing manipulation tactics. The Emma Rodriguez Foundation, established by her former students' families, provides free safety resources for women in online relationships and funds domestic violence prevention programs in schools. Emma's kindergarten classroom at Lincoln Elementary has been preserved as a memorial. Her students, now older but not forgotten, still leave flowers and drawings at her desk. The school established the Miss Emma Award for teachers who show exceptional care for their students' emotional well-being. Emma's love for her students was pure and beautiful, Principal Garcia reflected. That same capacity for love made her vulnerable to a monster who saw kindness as weakness. But her legacy is that her story is now saving other women from the same fate. Rashid may have destroyed Emma's life, but he couldn't destroy the love she had shared with the world. Her memory lives on in every child she taught, every woman who recognizes warning signs because of her story, and every family that stays safe because of the lessons learned from her tragic death. Emma Rodriguez wanted nothing more than to love and be loved. Her murder reminds us that predators weaponize our deepest human needs, but also that love and kindness will always be more powerful than evil and manipulation. If this story has opened your eyes to the dangers of online predators and the importance of recognizing manipulation tactics, please subscribe to this channel and share this video with others who need to hear Emma's story. Together, We can honor her memory by protecting others from meeting the same tragic fate.